Johny and Max have been working in this case also with FGR and a number of colleagues around the country, specifically looking at chain throwing, which has been highlighted as one of our major remaining risks, I guess, as we move forward and identify hazards within our industry. This has certainly come up as one, and so that's the project that they have tackled. So without any further ado, the floor is yours.
Hey, good day. I'm Johny. It's Max, and as Ren kind of introduced, we're doing a study on chain throwing on trucks in New Zealand. It was brought forward kind of by Keith Raymond, who's on the call from FGR as a bit of an industry kind of back project. So that's why we're pretty keen to take it on. Good comments in the industry, and yeah, we did most of our work, our data collection in term 3 this year out at Johny's plantation, which was run by Ryanair. So we're on a Ryanair skid, and that's where we collected our data. So why did we do this? The problem state. There's no really hard data available on how long it actually took to secure a load, and we've also wanted to talk to truck drivers about what their thoughts on the securing process was. You know, was there anything that the industry hadn't highlighted that they thought was actually causing them issues, and you know, how were they getting injured? And yeah. So one of the questions that was brought up quite a bit before we started, particularly in our work plan presentation, was how many different techniques, well, like what different techniques they were. We encountered only one in the whole time that we did a sidearm technique. I've done a little photo breakdown each different part of it. But you know, we had talk about a skip and rope technique or a lead rope technique. You know, we throw a lighter rope over. We only had anecdotal kind of evidence that there was occurring. We're sure it does occur, but you know, some of the trucks drivers said we'd put people on, beginners on it for about 2 weeks, but then they moved to the sidearm technique. The trailer configurations that we encountered out at the skid were 2-bunk and 3-bunk. 2-bunk has 6 chains, so 4 bolsters and 2 bellies. Whereas 3-bunks got 6 bolsters and 3 bellies. And we went to Ren actually after our first day of doing the time study, and he said no time study survives its first day, and that was entirely true for us. We started off with organising, throwing, and repositioning and securing as 4 separate sections. But when we got out there and actually saw guys on the ground doing it, we found that they really just kind of amalgamated into one. So that's how those 4 sections were our time study sections. The delay will be touched on quite a bit later. So anyway, this is all our data for all the trailer configurations, 2-bunk and 3-bunk. So and you can see on the legend here what the different section is, and that y-axis in seconds. And this was actually our longest, the truck that took the longest, which was a 2-bunk, which is a bit of an outlier. Here are our 3-bunks. You can kind of see they're quite consistent with each other. And we only got 4 3-bunks out of the 19 trucks, so the rest of them were 2-bunks. And here's our stats for 2-bunks. You can see with having done more time study than 2-bunks, we've got quite a tighter standard deviation, as you can see, compared with the 3-bunks. But we're sure with the 3-bunks, had we encountered more with that figure, probably would have dropped. And yeah, so the total time we found for the 3-bunks, the 2-bunks was 276 seconds with a 79-second standard deviation. And we used a box and whisker plot here to describe, to illustrate the 2-bunk data. Repositioning securing had 2 outliers, tensioning and 1 outlier. The interquartile range for organising throwing, I've just got on here, is 63, whereas both of the next one's both under 25 seconds. There's a strong positive skew on organising throwing, whereas repositioning's only got a slight negative skew, tensioning's got a slight positive skew. This graph here is just kind of to give an illustration for the 3-bunk configurations. These separate bars are like the specific colour for different trucks, but it's not really showing too much. But it's just to give you guys some kind of view what kind of figures we were getting. This is probably more important for it. We can see that the standard deviation is slightly bigger across the board, but as I said previously, that's probably due to the low sample numbers that we got. But we got a 447 second mean time for the 3 bunks, but and that standard deviation is actually lower for the total. So delays, yeah, as you can see on our graphs, we didn't include delays. This is because our delays were so wide ranging. You can see our top one was 19.5 minutes. That was when the truck driver was out of his cab talking to loader about the log grades. So you can imagine that on graph would have just absolutely screwed the sales. Other reasons for delays are reorganising the chain after a poor throw, bring it back down, calling it up again, throwing it. The chain being caught in bolster hooks up here, which sounds extremely rare, and we think it was, but it was just a kind of one-off accident. And re-entering cab, mainly with 3 bunks, so loading continued. Yeah, so this is kind of the conclusions for our time study. 3 bunk, small sample size, as I said earlier, 447 second mean time. The 2 bunks, because we had 15 trucks, we found that 276 seconds. And the only big factors we could think of that would influence the time would be, the energy, the strength of the truck drivers. There was nothing kind of suggesting otherwise, that they're all pretty consistent. Like all the trucks were from the same trucking company.
So as Johnny said before, the other part of our project was a survey questionnaire. So this actually found very practical use on this. So we were lucky enough to interview 9 drivers through this survey. So we asked them 7 questions in total, and this is the highlight of the main 3 questions which we found most beneficial. So if any of the drivers were injured throughout their careers, so we found that 4 out of the 9 drivers reported having injuries. 3 of these were musculoskeletal shoulder injuries from the action of throwing a chain, and 1 driver was struck in the head by a switch bar. All of these 4 drivers didn't have any time off work though from their injuries. They just used painkillers to minimise the pain and continued working. On average, they said 3 or 4 days after they got injured, they were sort of fine and back to work normally. This was interesting as well, because we thought quite a few of the drivers would have been injured over their careers, but it didn't seem to be the case. The drivers noted that injuries, especially the shoulder injuries, were reduced when switching to the 6mm chain, as it was lighter than the 7 and 8mm chain previously used to throw over the long stacks. Another question that we asked them were, have they experienced chains or logs coming loose over their time? 3 out of the 9 drivers reported logs moving a significant amount out of the packet in their careers. This occurred when the centre logs slipped out of the log packet and the remaining logs on the outside remained stationary. This is due to the tough conditions in New Zealand, so wet radiated pine logs are very smooth, so they don't have much friction holding them into the stack. All of the 9 drivers said that chains do come loose occasionally. This is especially with radiated pine again, due to the logs settling as they bounce along the gravel roads that we build them. It was also found that ratchets significantly help with logs and chains coming loose. This is a special, especially with pulp grade timber, as it is quite all over the place and needs a bit of tensioning to secure it down to the bolsters and to each of the logs. The final interesting question was early retirement. So none of these drivers were expected to face early retirement, which is quite interesting because we thought that after a while, initially we thought that they would be quite sore and not be able to throw the chains. But this wasn't the case here. One of the drivers was even for 47 years at retirement age already, and he said there was no sign of him retiring anytime soon. Most of the drivers stated it's not physically demanding chain throwing as one thought. They just said once you have good technique, you're away laughing. So through the question as well, we had open-ended conversations with the drivers about other things that affect their day-to-day jobs. So one of these was the chain attachment position. The drivers all stated that having the chain attached halfway up the bolster made it significantly easier to throw the chain over the log stack. And then through later research, we found that the chain has to be attached to a lower position in the log to be able to use that 6mm chain that makes it that much easier. This is to do with angles and yeah, it's quite confusing actually, but having the chain attachment position halfway up the bolster was going to be much easier. Another main thing that we talked to the drivers about was having a power bar in the middle there. So that power bar attaches to both the end of the twitch bar and to the ratchet system attached onto the trucks. It's got lots of grip on it, so their hands don't slip off in the wet conditions. The end there attaches to the twitch bar, which makes it almost impossible for it to slip off and strike the drivers back in the head, which makes driving much safer. And all in all the drivers love the addition of this power bar to their trucks. And the final major thing mentioned by the drivers was the action of shock loading. So if you can see there, the hammer shackle and the D shackle is in a bad position. So when the chain gets twitched from the other side and tensioned up, that can slip, which causes a movement in the chain, and which is transferred through to their body. So when they're twitching and when they're ratcheting, their body shakes down, which can cause arm, shoulder, back, neck injuries. And all the drivers said this was a major thing for them. They said you do it once or you do it twice and you don't do it again, but it's not a nice feeling. So that's a major thing which is easily fixed that has such a big impact on their lives. And that shock loading also occurs with the ratchet system as well. When you let it get worn out, as it does over time, the chains or the cogs that link into the chain can slip as well and cause that shock loading, which is a massive problem. So to summarise the survey questionnaires, we found that injuries do happen, but they're far less frequent than expected. This was mainly due to the drivers having a good technique while using the safe, correct gear. They still do occur though, which is still a problem for the industry. But we found that the majority of these are of low severity. Log slips, so it's a difficult problem to solve in New Zealand's conditions with slippery, greyed out pine logs with no bar. It was found that logs do come loose from time to time, but reduced with the ratchet system having a high movement. And the use of gear was the other big summary from the survey questionnaire. We found that ratchet, power bars, and attachment positions all have a large effect on the drivers and their driver safety. We found that more research and standardization across the industry would be beneficial in the future to help keep our drivers safe and out of injury. So finally, we'd just like to thank quite a few people who helped us along the way, especially Keith Raymond from FDR. He was very beneficial in our project. We'd like to thank Ryanair and the crew that let us come out to their site. Jared up from Trinder, he was very helpful as well. Yeah.
And David as well from Trinder, and SML Logging for letting us have access to their drivers for interviews, and also Ian Brown as well, who we consulted quite a bit earlier on and gave us a really interesting talk into his findings, and also the design manager whose name currently escapes me from Patrick's, who was very helpful as well. Thank you.
All right, very good. All right, great, everyone. A couple of questions and then we'll wrap it up. Really good results. Nice to see some of the timing. So what is it? It's 300, so that's 5 minutes for a 2-bunk, and then basically 7.5 minutes for a 3-bunk. Is what we're looking at in terms of chaining up, plus the delay, which is about 3 minutes on average for across the board. Yeah, so great.
Well, I have got a question, but just a comment. I think some of the things we identified there, the ratchet slipping, the shock loading, the mounting point, all this really good stuff.
All those little things that have such a big effect on the drivers that no one really knew about.
It was quite strong, especially you guys prior to everyone.
I did, yeah, I didn't do it the right technique. I'm gonna use the drivers always talk about the kind of their kind of technique that they really get into over time, but I did more brute strength kind of technique, and what happens there is you always lose your helmet. You can always tell when someone's doing it too hard when they lose their helmet. So we only had one driver lose their helmet across all the different trucks and throws that they did. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, any other questions? Yeah,
Is that the sidearm throwing technique sort of like universal around the world, or are there different systems? You know,
Well, no around the world, but they did in New Zealand, all the truck drivers seem to think that that was the one. Well, across SML, definitely anyway. Yeah, but seems standard across New Zealand. Yeah,
Around the world, they've lost techniques and ways they do things, but yeah, especially across New Zealand.
very good. Okay. Hey, if there's no more questions, thank you very much. And that wraps it up. Yeah.